All right, welcome in. We are live. We are, laughing off screen. It's always the
Jesus.
fun way to start. Is that we're joking around with each other before we hit live because if you can't laugh, if you can't laugh at this season, this team, then it's just you're just going to drive yourself crazy. But that sucked.
How did we get here again, right? Like, it's like, really, like over and over and over. I saw, was it Greenberg that talked about the hamster wheel today? And I've heard plenty of Groundhog Day references. It's like, geez, Louise, what is going on with this friend? It's so hard being a Bears fan. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I just if it wasn't so obvious, like if we hadn't talked about it like for weeks on end last year
Yeah.
and how much sense it would make to line up coaching staff, get an offensive minded coach to come in and be paired with Caleb Williams from the start. You're given this gift of the number one pick in a draft where you've got this uber talented quarterback, and you say, nah. And look, you and I are in agreement that we believe strongly that this is George McCaskey and the rest of the ownership organization not feeling comfortable paying out multiple years of a coaching contract if they don't have to. And that little run at the end of the year allowed them to make that, case
Yeah.
that they could keep Eberflus and not start over and not charge them an extra year that they would pay out. Some people don't agree. Some people think, well, no, Poles is the guy. It's on Poles. He brought him back. And I just don't believe it. I
It
just
really
don't believe
seemed,
it.
I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but I'm sure part of it is, like you said, I mean, it's not like they're a poor organization, but we've seen reported in a few places where it's like they just don't have that kind of cash laying around. I mean, it's like, they
They don't have
aren't
the cash.
this isn't Jeff Bezos, they don't have like billions just sitting there kind of waiting to do what they want to do. And they have to be financially responsible. And like you said, they had the chance to do it. Like, well, they had a nice finish, like you said, it was a gift. It was a gift they were given, the number one overall pick. It would have made everything okay. Hey, Flu, sorry, buddy. I gotta let you go because situation is changed. We got the number one overall pick. It just makes the most sense to get the coaching staff, the offense, and our number one draft pick quarterback all lined up on the same time frame. It's not just us talking about it. It was talked about by everyone. It was like the thing everyone wanted to do. It would have been the most logical sense, and that's not what the Bears do.
Nope. The Bears do not always make the most logical sense. That is just what we have learned over our decades and decades of fandom and heartache. But you want to get into this thing?
Let's do it. Let's kick it
I
off.
don't want to ruin too. I don't want to step on too much
Yeah.
of what I have. So let's get into this thing. Welcome to Bear of Balance. I'm Jeff Burkus. On the other side of the screen, Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, I am wearing all black because I am mourning the loss of the 2024 Chicago Bears season. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm the same way. This has gone. I was thinking about it earlier today. So we've had two embarrassing losses in a row, right? In completely different manner. One, they clawed back and they had a chance to win, and just the late game sequence, horrible. Okay, great. You got a chance to bounce back this week. How do you bounce back? You lay that kind of egg. You get blown out by 20. It was just a horrible, horrible back-to-back weeks. And I'm trying to think, when's the last time the Bears had two games this embarrassing back to back? And that was the double 50 burger back in the Trestman era, right? When they had, was that Trestman or was that Fox? And it was so long ago. It was like,
I think it was
these
Trestman
2
and Mel
weeks,
Tucker, right?
yeah, Trestman, these 2 weeks losing in these two fashions. It's just, come on, guys. Like what are you doing? And then you have the coaching staff getting criticized by literally everyone. Media, national, local, players. Everyone sees it except, I guess, Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren.
I think, I mean, maybe I'm incorrect because time fades some of those memories, but I think at the time, the double 50 burger was pretty embarrassing for Bears fans to watch, especially a team that you're used to seeing good defense and all that, right? But I don't know that they were getting destroyed nationally. Like, it's like, "Oh, yeah, the Bears are bad, they're just getting beat," right? Like, they're just kinda this is embarrassing losses. This is embarrassing, like, you are embarrassing yourself, and they just keep getting, I mean, all of the national shows are on this, right? That's a little bit of, like, expectations, right? With great expectations, you have this rookie quarterback, there's more eyeballs on you, like, they care about you more, so that's part of it, but this is just really embarrassing stuff, and we talked about it a lot, and I would say for the most part, people understand and they're kind of with us, and but there's a few people that kind of came after us last week that were like, you guys are creating this, and you guys need to stop piling on, and this is move on, what are you doing, and it's like, no, like, this is serious stuff, this is
Yeah.
important stuff, this is what happens. That Hail Mary beat them this week too.
Yeah. That's what it seemed like. I mean, that team was not ready to play. They went out there and the vaunted defense, they got gashed. I mean, this is the first time they gave up. They had a streak going, right, where they give up less than 21 or fewer points, and that didn't last. And I did the numbers earlier, and this is the most yards they've given up rushing in like 2 years, and you know they couldn't stop anyone. And look, the Cardinals are fine. You know, they're not a team that should be 20 points better than the Chicago Bears.
Now, so I was thinking about this, and I don't know where else we're going to get into it, so I just want to do it up top. But the reason why we talk so much about things like the leadership thing and why when red flags come up in the last couple of years, we've spent time on them. Like, why isn't Eberflus taking responsibility? Why is he always saying it's on the players to do this? And he's never the one that takes responsibility. And this is the first week where he was taking responsibility. Very clearly, he had a talking to from Ryan Poles
Yeah.
and probably Kevin Warren and said, "Hey, like, you got to cut this out. Like, you need to be the one that takes control here." But like, we have noted that over his tenure that he does not do that. Now, the first year they were trying to be bad. I know some people don't maybe agree with that, but it was very clear that they were trying to clear the cap. They were taking a gap year, whatever you want to call it. And so, everything he did, you were just like, well, hopefully he learns. He makes mistakes, but that kind of helps because it got us the number one pick. So there was this like, yeah, he cost us a couple games, but it's his first year as a head coach. The roster's not very good. Who cares? Like, you're flipping everything. And then year two, you have those three epic collapses, and he doesn't take responsibility for things. And he's not showing much improvement. And then, like we've talked about, you had that amazing opportunity with the number one pick. You can align it. Here's the time. Just like break. You know what? Didn't work out. Sorry, man. Here's your money. Enjoy golfing for the year, or go be a defensive coordinator, or whatever. But there was enough there in the leadership to be able to say, this isn't the guy. This isn't the dude, right? Year three, you have now added Montez Sweat and paid him. He's a leader. You've added DJ Moore, paid him. He's a leader. You've now drafted this quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams. He's a leader, right? You've added these guys that are strong voices. How about Kevin Byard, who has been around? He's a leader. He knows things. He's a two-time first-team All-Pro. He's a good professional athlete. He has seen things. He's a leader. Now you can't get away with that because you have now built the locker room up to what you want it to be. I think Ryan Poles should be pretty proud of this locker room. It is 85-90% there. Like, there's a couple things that he needs to work on in this next offseason to get it to where it's a legitimately competitive team that could challenge some of these good NFC teams for some playoff in playoff games. Like, that's how good I think this team is and how close I think they are from competing. So when you add that level of leadership and that level of talent, now you have this locker room that has expectations. And if you aren't matching that with your coaching, and if you aren't matching that with the accountability, time for you to go.
Yeah, this is a playoff roster. I mean, I think year three in the NFL, you should have your team ready to compete for a playoff spot. I'm not saying a title, a championship, but they should be ready to go. I mean, they should be competing, whether rookie quarterback or not. This is what the Bears have. They should be ready to go here. I think it was Jalen Johnson earlier today. He had a comment. I think it was on the Score, where they asked him something about were you guys going to scale back some of your criticisms? And he's like, hey, look, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but he's like, what I say to the media, what I say in front of you guys, I've said to the coaches too. So like you said, there's strong leaders, a lot of alpha voices in that locker room. And, if Eberflus can't elevate that part of his game, I mean, where do they go? I mean, he can't be your lead voice if you're being questioned by the leadership on your team.
I think he continues to act like a coordinator, right? Like I don't think he's really come into being a head coach. And I saw that by just like simply not taking timeouts, not knowing that that's what your role is in that moment. He just has not embraced the things that head coaches do. But I think from a leadership standpoint, I mean, he has a very severe lack of ability to lead from the front there. And I think that you need that in the NFL. I think that you need like you need to put your players in a position to succeed, and you need to be the one to take responsibility if things aren't working out, particularly if you're the one that messed up.
Yeah.
And so I think these guys that's too strong of a locker room for these guys to let that slide. 2 years ago, it didn't matter. There were no expectations. There weren't a lot of strong leaders. Those guys were getting turned over. It just wasn't that type of team. You knew that it was a year of transition. The guys on the field probably knew it was a year of transition. They're playing for their next contract on a different team, whatever, right? But this team is different. This team had and they see it in each other. And so I don't know. I get it. The McCaskies have never fired a coach in season, but if there's a sense that this locker room is lost, that this locker room has no interest in playing for this leadership because that bond has been broken, that trust has been broken, then this is the time for you to change how you've done things historically. So now, hey, Kevin Warren, earn that president money. Yeah. Step in, make the big boy decision, go into George's office and say, this is what has to happen because these players are not on the same page as these coaches. And we need to now focus on who we're going to bring in here. So let's just make this decision now. Let's see what we can do with interim coaching. And then let's focus on next year. And we're going to be looking at everybody, Ben Johnson, looking at everybody to see who could be the next coach of this team. And not this BS. I'm just going to get way out in front of this. But the Bears do this thing when they hire a coach where they take forever. Yeah. And they go through this. They brought in consultants and they do all this. Teams move. They know who they want. They go get them. There's going to be a couple of hot commodities in this coaching cycle. Go after them. I am so sick of losing out on these smart offensive-minded coaches because they sit back and they relax and they take their time in this. I don't know. Like, you should be starting that process right now. I hope Ryan Poles has a book right now of the coaches that he wants to interview when it's time for that.
Yeah, I mean, I did a radio spot earlier this morning, and I was talking about Ryan Poles. Let's look at this roster. And if he truly feels it's a playoff caliber team, if he feels they should be better than 4-4 right now, then he has his question answered about who his head coach. It's not Flus. I mean, he may be a nice guy. He may have had to glow up. He may be a good defensive coordinator. He is just not the leader that this team needs right now. And I mean, the Patriots are up this coming up week. That's another bad team. The Bears should go in there and win. You know, it's at home. They should have all the advantages. Man, if they lose this on Sunday, come on. And look, I get the history thing, how you never fired a coach midseason. That's not a reason not to do something. You know, it's only history until you break the trend. And all that time, I mean, 85, that's the last time we've had a title here. Come on. If it's not working what they're doing. So if it takes breaking a trend to get the ship righted, break the damn trend.
Yeah, try something new.
Yes.
That's what we said last year. Hey, why don't you try something new? Why don't you align all the coaching and the new quarterback up? Just see what happens. And if it doesn't work, then like I'll shut up. But maybe just try something new. Let's not keep the hamster wheel going. All right, let's get into the categories. We could probably complain for a while, but I wanted to get that out up top. So we'll see if that permeates throughout the show or not. But we're getting into Trench Tribute. This is a tough one. Now, normally we can find some silver lining in the trenches because there's a player or two that performs well in the trenches, and we'd love to start here. Even in a bad game, there's somebody that's doing good stuff. This was a game where the Bears got pretty much dominated on both lines. So
Yeah.
this is a little bit more difficult here. But where did you want to go?
I'm going to go on offense, and again, it's hard because look, the D line was gassed. They gave up a ton of yards rushing. The O line gave up a lot of pressures, almost 50% pressure percentage against a terrible, terrible Cardinals pass rush. But I'm going O line. I'm going to go Tevin Jenkins. I thought he was pretty good. He is a guy that came back. He missed the end of last week's game, right? He left the game. He had a knee injury. There was some question about him playing. He gutted it out. He knew his team needed him out there because they already lost Bill Murray to IR. There's some other injuries there. Braxton Jones, Kieran Amangaji are injured. He gutted it out. He went out there. It wasn't the best game, but for him going out there and doing what he had to do, I'm going to give him a little kudos this week for the Trent's tribute.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the game and the offensive line is bad. Like, I mean, it's just
Tough.
like it's choose your flavor of who you want to blame for a lot of these
Yeah.
pressures. Someone said something like, "Hey, Borum played pretty well," and then about an hour later, "Hey, never mind, I had only watched the first half."
Yeah.
I mean, and that was kind of the theme is that they kind of traded off when they would give up pressures, and that's a problem. And then there were some plays where all of the players just gave up a pressure. Like there was some jailbreak stuff that you just don't see at the professional level. Normally you see one or two guys, or the game works and a guy gets home. There was a few. I'm sorry, I know this is a Trent's tribute for Tevin Chickens, but this offensive line was so bad.
Yeah.
Yes, against one of the worst pass rushing units in the league. That's the important thing. And this is the Vikings. They're bringing exotic pressure, and they've got some talent. Yeah, okay, I kind of get it. No, this was one of the worst pressure units in the league, and they looked awesome against the Bears, and that's a problem. That's a problem. I got some other O-line stuff that we'll talk about in a minute. I went kind of the cheap route, and it was gonna highlight the two guys that picked up the two defensive linemen that picked up sacks, Chris Williams and Jacob Martin. Yeah, Montez Sweat was a late scratch. He was questionable coming into the game. Obviously, was not able to play. So those snaps had to be filled by defensive line snaps had to be filled by multiple people. So give some kudos for those guys for getting home for a sack. One of those is pretty impressive. The other one was pretty good too. Like, I mean, they're good sacks. They were legitimate. They weren't just BS sacks. They were good pressures. And Kyler Murray, he's very small, so he does go down easy if you get him. But he's very quick. Like, he's a super agile person.
Yeah.
So to be able to rush effectively against him, keep him contained, and then get to him is an accomplishment. I think that that would be a tough guy to bring down, just because he's so nimble. So I took the cheap route and just went with stats and went with the guys that got the sacks. But kudos for those guys for getting home.
Jacob Martin has been solid now in a couple weeks. He hasn't had a lot of reps. He had a nice, I think he had 2 tackles for loss. He had the sack. He's active. I mean, honestly, I was not expecting him to be much of a player at all. I watched a little bit of his film when the Bears signed him. I'm like, yeah, he's fine. He's a guy. He kind of gave me vibes of last year's guys, Rasheem Green, some late free agent guys they picked up that haven't really done much, but they're just a couple guys. The scheme. Let's bring him in and see what happens. But he's looked pretty good. I have no complaints about Jacob Martin. But how about Dom Rob getting the start for Sweat? He hasn't been able to play this whole year. He's been inactive. And then
Why would you do that, Lester?
Huh?
Why would you, as the Bears, start Dominic Robinson when he hasn't been active all year? Why would you give him the start? Because that's a thing, right? Like, I have X number of starts in my NFL career. Like, why would you give him the start where you have a lot of players that have been putting in a lot of reps for you? Like, why wouldn't you give one of those guys the start and then work him in the rotation?
My first thought when I saw that he was starting was because he was one of the few Bears mentioned in trade talks. I don't know why. Who would want to trade for a guy that hasn't played this whole season? But there was some buzz, and I'm putting the buzz in air quotes out there, that Dom Rob was a guy that some teams are looking for. So maybe this is their showcase way to kind of get him out there and kind of show something. I don't know. I can't expect the Bears doing much on the trade deadline, which is coming up here tomorrow at 3 Central. But it just seemed odd. It was an odd decision to go with a guy that couldn't even he couldn't even dress for you for the first few games of the year.
Yeah, I love the trade talk, because the number of guys that are on hey, guys are calling about this guy. It's clearly the general manager of that team being like, hey, we'd be interested in moving this guy. Could you
Yeah.
add him to your reports? Yeah, the number of like, hey, the Texans might be looking at Nate Davis. It's like,
Nate Davis.
oh
Who
yeah,
the hell wants
sure,
Nate
yeah,
Davis?
oh,
Get out of here with that.
big wink to the camera. I mean, if he gets anything for Nate Davis at this point, Bears fans are going to build him a statue. But so it's kind of funny. Like, where does this stuff actually come from? And then sometimes just accounts are just like, hey, here's 10 trades I'd like to see. And then all of a sudden, people are like, hey, the Bears are going to trade so and so. And it's like, it was just some Yahoo
Yeah.
that wrote up an article. Like, chill. Like, this is not a real thing. So you gotta be careful. Keep your head on a swivel out there, folks.
Yes.
You gotta be careful. All right, let's get into the Twitter portion. Lester and I are on Twitter so that you don't have to be. But if you do want to be, feel free to follow us. I'm at GridironBorn and Lester is at WiltFongJR on the Twitter machine. But I'm going to start us off at Benjamin Solak. He's talking about the last play of the half, or the touchdown before the half. He says, yeah, per Elias Stats Bureau, this is the longest rushing touchdown given up in the last 20 seconds of the first half since the 1970 merger. It's very, very hard to give up this touchdown. LOL. What the hell happened there, Lester?
I was born in 1970. That's a long ass time ago. I can say from experience. Yeah, that's a Flus took credit or took accountability there in the interview, said that he made the mistake. He called a pressure package thinking they were going to try and throw it, and they didn't, obviously. But look, it may have been a bad play call, but also the Bears players, they didn't look like they were in a rush to make a tackle there. There was a couple dives, a couple whiffs, and that's just again, when that happened, you're like, man, is this team done? Are they tuning out the coaches? Are they? You hate to say questioning a player's effort, right? Like you hate to do it because these guys are pros for the most part. They're out there doing what they have to do. But a game like this, that they're supposed to come out there and play better, to play that bad, you have to question it. Is it somewhere deep down they just don't have as much effort as they normally would because they just don't trust the message anymore?
I mean, it was really bad. This has never happened. This is what this tweet means. Like, this has never happened. Like, they were clearly trying to get in range of a field goal. They're hoping that they could steal 3 points at the end of the half. And they gave up 7. They gave up a touchdown. Like, this game, it broke. That was I tweeted out right at the time. I'm like, this team, this is over. It's over.
Yeah.
Like, this team is now broken. Like, that you can't end. That's the last 2 halves that they played. And at that point had ended with just unbelievable, incredibly low percentage, or never happened in the history of the NFL kind of things. I just don't. How do you move past that as a defensive team? Like, as a defensive coach, as a defensive, like, that's your lead unit. Like, how do you get over that?
If his defense starts slipping, because that's really that's why he's there. I mean, that's why he's still around. That's why, he's there because, hey, he at least he knows defense. He's a good play caller there. If that part of the game starts slipping, then there's nothing holding this team back for this franchise back from making a move. Because if he can't even get that side of the ball working, what is the point?
Anyway, interesting stuff. All right. What about you?
I saw this tweet from Jason Leisure. He writes for the Sun-Times earlier today. I'm like, man, that's like, a mic drop moment here, so he tweeted out, everyone inside and outside House Hall needs to stop referring to, and I'm going to quote again, outside noise with the Bears. When the team is underperforming and veterans/captains are speaking up about the issue, that's inside noise. The Bears' problems are not media creation. You hear a lot of fans say, oh, the media has to stop talking about this. Well, the reason the media is talking about it is because the players are talking about it. The captains are talking about it. The veterans are complaining. It's they're bringing it on themselves, and they have no one to blame but themselves because of what's happening here with the players. I mean, these days the players all have a radio spot. I already talked about Jalen Johnson. DJ Moore was on the radio. Kevin Bayard has a podcast, I believe. So Cole Kmet has a show on CHGO. So these guys all have an avenue. This is a new era, social media. They all have a thing, whether it's media traditional, whether it's blogs, whether it's podcasts. This is what's being talked about, and it's the Bears are creating it.
Yeah, this idea, and a lot of people kind of latch onto it, like, oh, the Chicago media is bad, and they're creating stuff. They need to give like lay off, and it's like, one, it's their job,
Yeah.
and we can maybe be considered quasi media or pseudo media sometimes. Like sometimes we get rolled in, sometimes we get rolled out. Like I don't know where I get it. Put us where you need to make your point, but we don't really impact anything. We are just trying to read the tea leaves and try to interpret and see what's happening here. And I think that's what a lot of those beat writers are doing too. They're trying to make sense of what's happening, and they just are much closer to the situation. But I think Bill Zimmerman mentioned something pretty interesting on one of his recent podcasts, and he was saying, those of you that get upset with the media, like, this is your conduit to this team as a
Yeah.
fan. Like they are representing you to understand what's happening. And so when Eberflus and when they kind of stiff arm the media, they're stiff arming you. Like this isn't like some other entity that you're cheering against. Like the media is what gives you information into your team. And I thought that was a pretty interesting way to frame it, because that's how else would we know anything if not for these guys that are putting, like, the beat writers, particularly, Courtney Cronin being like the biggest name with at ESPN. Would we know anything about this team without people like Courtney Cronin and our friend Nicholas Moriano with CHGO, like, putting time in on the beat, the guys at the Trib, the guys at the Sun Time, and Colleen Kane, like, there's a lot of names. And when you really think about the ecosystem that's around the Bears, there's a lot of names out there that are putting a lot of work in to get a lot of information out there about this team. How would we know otherwise? That's what we use as a lot of our building blocks to be analysts and to try to understand and mix that with film review and roster builds and some of this other stuff to create content that we hope enriches our enjoyment of this team, right? And so all of this starts though with these people that are the beat writers and are there every day. They're not against you, they're for you. They're trying to find
Yeah.
information to make more sense of this team.
I mean, is there some drama being stirred up because they're doing their job? Of course. I mean, that's the nature of the business, right? That's what they do. For example, on Wednesday, the Bears decided to close practice to media, right? They want no media there. They said, oh, we're going to do a walkthrough, no media allowed. And then, of course, Sunday, it comes out that, Tyree or Stevenson was informed that was the day he was informed he would be benched. He would not play. He would not start with his unit. He'd play, but he wouldn't play. And, the initial report was from Jay Glazer was he left the field. So
Yeah,
that
let's
blew up.
talk about that. Let's
Yeah,
talk about that.
so that blew up, and then Courtney Cronin follows up, and she gets more details. And look, I wrote an article about it too because it came out. I was like, "This is huge news. I got to make sure WCG has a voice out there." And I'm always trying careful about that because there's no context. So I even put that in the article. There's no context yet. Did he leave the field for a minute? Did he leave the field for the day? Did he leave the facility? Courtney Cronin comes out. He gets more details. He basically took himself off the warm-up line to gather his thoughts, is what it ended up seeming like happened. He went right back. Jay Glazer's report made it sound like a bigger deal than it was because that's what he was told. But if the media was there on Wednesday, if it wasn't a closed practice, we would have had the story as it happened. It would not have been a big deal on Sunday.
Yeah, but it's and again, to kind of extend off of that, like, who gave Glazer the information,
Yeah.
right? Who benefits from Glazer putting it out like that? To me, that's someone who wants the player to look like, they're not being mature, to take away the blame. I mean, connect the dots however you want. But if you're going to start playing games through the media, I would have a bet as to who I believe may have released that information. But here's Jay Glazer, huge national platform. He's the first one to mention it, and it spreads like wildfire, like you say, right? And then I heard it on Pat McAfee. There was a clip that I was listening to on Pat McAfee, and he's setting up Schefter, I think, to talk about Eberflus, and he mentions Tyreek Stevenson left the field in practice after he was told. Like, so he didn't get the Courtney Cronin update, or he chose not to not to process that and add that context in. So there's a lot of people that are still operating on Tyreek Stevenson. He's
Yeah.
he's soft, or he's not a team player. This is crap. Well, again, here's your beat writer Courtney Cronin coming in and giving you the proper context, and now you can make a more informed decision of like, okay, like I can kind of understand that as a person. Yeah, he probably was pretty upset. He pulled himself up, but he came right back, had to compose himself. Okay, that makes sense. Like now it's a very different story with the context, right? So multiple things going on there. One, playing games through the media, right? The national media and who gets information, who doesn't. Like that Ben Johnson drop last week,
Yeah.
right?
Out of the
Why did
blue.
that drop the second after there was a really questionable Matt Eberflus decision, right? Who benefits from that? Who in the world would drop that out, right?
Yeah.
Is there somebody in the Bears organization that maybe didn't want Matt Eberflus back, and now he was just waiting for that opportunity to kind of let that be out there, right? Like who knows why these things come out when they do, but I thought the timing of that was pretty interesting.
It's a game. I mean, it's a game these guys play. Agents, on both players' side, coaches' side, there's a lot of back channels that are worked. There are a lot of rules of what you can and can't do. Obviously, at the NFL, but a lot of them are broken. And then it's like free agency. Really the tampering period, right? The tampering period that they have is the guy signs immediately, and you're telling me that they haven't talked before this time. That as soon as the clock strikes, the deal is agreed to. There's some talk being made there. So it's a game. All the stuff through the media is a game. They talk through the media. It is what it is. Again, that's where the beat reporters come. We have to kind of sift through it. We got to know, okay, find the people you trust. I know I have mine. I have got people I know that are traditional media, non-traditional media. There are several that I know that I trust. If they say it, they're not always right. No one's even Schefter's not always 100%, but there are guys you have to kind of know who you trust, who you're going to listen to, and that's kind of that. Those are my go-to people.
Like a quick aside, and then we'll get back to the agenda because I think I'm just like totally not paying attention to the agenda right now. When I was at the Senior Bowl a couple years ago, I was sitting a couple rows ahead of Drew Rosenhaus, very famous agent, and he was talking to who I found out later to be a personnel guy for, we'll just say, an NFC West team. I'll just leave it at that. And they were having this conversation, and it was this Senior Bowl before, it's before free agency, and they're having this conversation in this very cryptic way, right? They're not saying a name, but they know who they're talking about.
Yeah.
Hey, are you guys interested in adding to your defensive interior line? Is that something you guys are looking for in free agency, or are you thinking about the draft? Like, oh yeah, we'd like to add a guy, yeah, but kind of like a guy on the younger side of his. Oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, what are you thinking in terms of like, it's like a $6 million a year kind of player, or are you thinking more of like a 10? And it was like his client list,
Yeah.
who the positions, and so does this guy. But this like hypothetical conversation that we're maybe having, but maybe not having, right? Those kind of things clearly happen. They were happening out in the open. There's no reason why I should have been privy to that information, but I was, right? I could figure that out. Anyway, all right, let's get into Caleb's corner. Here's a stat line: 22 of 41, 217 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, took 6 sacks. Your life is going to suck here for Sack Watch. 45 yards lost. He had 4 carries for 5 yards. So not exactly. This was just avoiding sacks. This wasn't like really any sort of productive scrambles. The stat line is terrible once again, but no interceptions, no fumbles lost, right? So at least you have that. Ran into, I think, at least a couple sacks. I think you're going to probably put a couple on him. He's trying to do stuff. Went back and watched this today. I don't know how much I want to torture myself with all 22 this week, but it feels to me, Lester, that I was actually kind of impressed with Caleb Williams. Like I understand people are going to say, like, what are you talking about? He's under constant pressure. Most of the plays that he was able to complete were pretty impressive throws. Like he's spinning it. And he had some drops. We'll get into that at some point. That didn't help. And then a lot of times it seems like He's really inaccurate. Well, I think that he's playing don't turn the ball over, and he's putting the ball in a position where I'm only going to let my guy have a chance at it, and otherwise it's just going to be incomplete. He's not inaccurate to where he's throwing it to the other team. He's inaccurate to where he's only giving his guy the opportunity, or he's just throwing it away. There's a lot of throwaways. I think he's got one of the highest throwaway percentages in the league right now. And it makes sense when you think about how much he likes to model his game after Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers is huge on throwaways. But I think that it's also about guys aren't open. And when he feels the pressure, he needs to either create or he needs to throw it away. And at the end of the day, you look at the stat sheet and you're like, well, that's really bad. But when you go and watch it, each individual throw, for the most part, makes sense to me.
There hasn't been a throwaway this year that I can recall where I'm like, why is he checking it out? I mean, it's like I said, he's under duress. There's a lot of pressure. This O line, and it's not all the O line. A lot of it is the pass protection schemes. A lot of it is the backs, tight ends, and Caleb himself. Like I said, I'm probably going to pin a couple sacks on him, but he's doing what he has to do, and this notion of not turning the ball over. That's a coaching thing. Throw it to our guy or no guy, right? That's the whole thing. You want to make sure the ball's in a place, especially in the red zone. If you're going to throw those fades, you got to throw those where it's only your guy's chance to make the catch. Sometimes you got to just chuck it. Sometimes you got to just wing it, and you got to trust your arm, trust your accuracy, and you got to put that ball where you have to put it. And I hope he's not having that coached out of him, the aggressiveness. I hope that's not happening already this part of his career. Another thing I hope we're not seeing happen, I hope we're not seeing him think too much about the pressure. It's the whole seeing ghost things. How with Sam Darnold, a few years back. And, we've seen quarterbacks through the years due to the pass pro in front of them, they start having their eyes drop. They start worrying more about the pressure coming than going through the progressions out there. So I hope it's not happening already with Caleb. I don't think it is, because you kind of watch him play and you're like, okay, he's going through his progressions. He's still making the reads that he has to make, but he is not as accurate as he was in college, especially with the deeper ball. So why is that? I mean, that's something that's going to eventually correct itself, I would hope. But if it doesn't, and the pressure rates continue to be high, like we said, we talked about the Cardinals. They couldn't pressure anybody. On Taylor Dowell's game preview this week, she talked to it was basically Darren Urban. He is the Cardinals version of Larry Mayer. So he writes for the team site. He's around the team all the time. He knows that the team inside and out. He said their pass rush stinks. The Bears should have the big advantage there. My fear was this will be the week when their pass rush is good because the Bears can't pass protect. So, and that's what happens. 6 sacks, 12 QB hits, almost 50% pressure rate. The Cardinals teed off, and that's affecting Caleb and his accuracy, I think.
Yeah, the totally movable object against the totally resistible force, and yeah, resistible force won there. I don't want to be in a position where we're making excuses. We're trying to find ways to spin and say no, he's really good. I just think it's fine. I don't think he's the problem. I would like to see a little bit more of putting your receivers in better positions in terms of the routes that they're asked to run. I'm still not seeing. It felt like again, we'll get into Rome, I guess, at some point, but it did seem like they went to Rome a little bit more. That's good. Let's see if that can continue. He really, to me, should be how you're running your passing game through, because he's got the most explosive playability. But then DJ Moore has plenty of that, but you have to understand what kind of route runner he is and put him in that position. And I'm just not seeing that either. I don't think they're using him well. You've made the point to me, Keenan Allen at this point in his career should probably be running a U tight end type route tree. And they're asking him to do things that they should probably be asking Rome to do. And so, is this just really not understanding your personnel? And why is it taking so long for that to reestablish the order of how this route tree, how the prioritization in the route concept goes? It seems like they're still back in August and they're not adjusting for what the reality is of these skill sets.
I was willing to give Shane Waldron a pass early on as he's working through his roster. There's there's only so much you can do in camp, right? You need to see these guys live action and know for sure, okay, Keenan does this well. I mean, you can watch a lot of film, but like I said, Keenan at this point in his career, man, it sucks because maybe he has fallen off a little bit. I mean, maybe he is not the same player he was. He's 31 now. He had that foot injury earlier in the year. Maybe it's still affecting him a little bit. It sucked to see it, but but at this point, this far into the season, Shane Waldron should know what he has, especially they had a bye a few weeks back
That's
where
what
it was
killed
a
him.
perfect time to kind of course correct and say, look, Keenan's this has been doing this for us. Rome is doing this. DJ Moore, we got to get more involved. Cole Kmet, we got to get more involved here. Let's scale back some Gerald Everett. Let's do this a little more. Let's do some more option routes with DeAndre Swift, which I'm still not seeing enough of, which I don't understand because he is so good at it, such a good receiver out of the backfield. So it's just not happening. It's just not happening, and that's a problem.
All right, let's move on to the stat of the week. Caught up in a numbers game. I don't actually know how to present this one, so let me just ask you this question: how many offensive line starting combinations do you think the Bears used in 2022?
2022.
Yep,
4 or 5, I'm guessing.
9. How
9.
many starting offensive line combinations do you think the Bears used in 2023?
Probably a little less.
It's 9.
9 again.
How many
Okay.
starting offensive line combinations do you think the Bears have used so far this year?
9.
There's only been 8 games. starting offensive line combinations, not individual plays.
Oh, okay. 3.
3. Yeah.
Nice.
So I thought it'd be a little higher, right? I tried to lead you. I totally tried to bait you there.
Yeah, I know you did.
Because it's been a mess the last couple of years, right? I tracked this. I opened up the tracker today and I was like, I'm gonna update this, see where we're at. I think they're in my head. I'm like, I think we're already at like 4 or 5. It's actually only 3. That was a little surprise. This was a new combination this week because Larry Borom had to start for Braxton Jones. But what is different is that the Bears have had 4 different players play at least one snap at left tackle. In previous years, that has been 1 or 2. Braxton Jones, manned the position in 2022. Last year, Borom had a few snaps, or had a few games because Braxton missed some time. But this year, you've already had like 1 random snap from Matt Pryor, and then Karan Amagaje, and then you've got the Borom start. You've had 4 different players log snaps at left guard. You've had two players log snaps at center, but those were kneel downs from Doug Kramer, so I get it. Like maybe I shouldn't count that. And then you've had 3 different players log snaps at right guard, and you've had 2 players log snaps at right tackle now that Wright missed some time. So the number of different players that have been in is actually higher than any of those other 2 years by the end of the year.
Oh, wow.
So like I mean, in a lot of these positions, one year, 2022, there was 6 different players that took a snap at left guard. So like, we're getting there though. Like there's a lot of players that have already seen action. We got our answer with Karan Amagaji would they you said he was hurt. He was still hurt.
Amangazi, yeah, he had a calf injury.
Okay.
He
I thought
out,
he was
yeah.
healthy scratch, but they threw Borom back in there. So anyway, I think you're seeing part of this offensive line issue is that there's a lack of continuity. Now, the second half of last year, when the Bears offense started to produce, part of that was there was continuity in that offensive line. They settled in. There was, I think, like 6 straight games where the same unit started together, and you started to see some of that continuity come together. We need to get guys healthy, and you need to see that kind of come together. You saw a little bit of that with the starting combination. The second starting combination was there for those 2, the winning streak and the wins. And part of that was like things were looking a little better on the offensive line. And then you started to see, some players go in and out. You saw some of the issues. So again, it comes back to the big guys up front, and we're starting to see more injuries stack up, and I'm a little worried about what this is going to look like if Wright has to miss some time. We know Tevin Jenkins he gutted it out, but we know that he's missed time in his career. What is this going to look like if you continue to play those revolving doors on the offensive line?
I'm guessing there'll be a different combination this week because, like you said, Wright does have the MRI scheduled for today, which is Monday. Flus did not update us at his presser, so the initial report, I think, from Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network said he may miss a couple games. I believe he said nothing set in stone, obviously, but it's an MRI sprain or an MCL sprain, I should say. So maybe he'll miss a game or two, and if that's the case, then what? Pryor kicks out to tackle. Ryan Bates, who has practiced now for a week, limited. Maybe he's activated. He's going to be your new starting right guard. So here's another new combination. And then at some point, I mean, Bates was signed to be your center. Do you just bite the bullet and stick him at center and put Shelton to the bench? Who knows what they're going to do here? But like you said, continuity up front is important. You want to have all these 5 guys playing as much as possible, so you don't see those stunts, fool them because they're used to it. We talk about it. It's the feel. You feel what the guy next to you is going to do when you're doing a double team or when the stunt's coming. You feel when it's time to let my guy go because I trust Tevin Jenkins next to me. He's waiting there because we played together so long. I trust it when the stunt's coming and I'm passing off my defensive end over. I know it's the time to do it because I've done it so often. The Bears haven't got that. That's why the stunts are killing them. The blitzes are killing them. The delays are killing them on the blitzes, and then there's some stunts where they're like really late developing stunts, or sometimes not always a stunt. It's just the D line just making moves. They're trying to get in there and just be aggressive with trying to fight through and do something. And they're just not able to kind of hold their pocket integrity. And that's a problem.
Yep, absolutely. So I again just wanted to kind of look at it and see. I was surprised that there weren't more different starting combinations, but we're going to start to pick that up. That's going to be a thing. So we'll keep track of it. What was your number?
My number is 31.48%, and that is the Chicago Bears' third down conversion rate this season, which is 31st in the NFL. So it's not very good. Last year, with Luke Getsy, the since fired OC, now no longer with the Raiders. Last year with Getsy, it was at 41.18%, which was 10th in the league. So a 10 percentage point drop off here. The Bears they're behind the sticks too much. Their first down plays have been horrendous. They're just not able to have a good drive starter, and that's kind of killing them. And then when it comes to third down, like I said, it's 31.48%. It's not good enough, and they have to figure out a way to get things better. Some of those option routes to DeAndre Swift would help. Cole Kmet would help a little bit here, I think. He's a guy that kind of find a spot in the zone. Using your receivers better. I think that will kind of help the offense click a little better. So they got to figure something out because, look, I was all for Shane Waldron. I thought that was a home run hire. He was the best guy on the market at the time. I thought he was going to come in here and just be good. I thought he'd be good for development for Caleb. It has not gone as I expected, as how most fans expected. It's been rough. It's a rough go so far from Waldron. And I don't know. I hear some people say maybe that his personality is too close to Flus, right? Maybe they're not. There's not enough clash there. One of those. They both kind of have the same kind of like, I don't want to say happy-go-lucky attitude, but they're kind of like there's no asshole, right, of the bunch. I mean, it's kind of what you need. You need one of your coachings on your staff to kind of be that guy. And they're just all going with the flow. We don't have that.
Yeah, he's definitely not a strong personality and maybe a little awkward, right? And you kind of need that opposite to kind of balance you out or somebody to kind of go up and above. But I think, not that anybody's missing Luke Getsy, and clearly the Raiders didn't think much of him either. But it's an interesting stat. And I think more than anything, the problem is a lack of discipline. Like you see so many penalties, which again, if you're all about hits, that seems to fly in the face of that. So that's pretty unfortunate. And then I think the other side of that is the play calling. When you're constantly behind, you're not staying on schedule. That's what's going to lead to a low conversion rate of third downs because you're constantly putting yourself in bad position. And then there's just some really weird play calling, just in general. Again, like we've talked about it. Being cute out of different personnel groupings where you need to just line up and get a yard and then they be cute like that stuff. Like you haven't earned that yet. Like that, those are the, it's like pitching backwards, right? Like some guys have to, sorry, baseball analogy, but if you don't have a good fastball, you have to pitch backwards. You have to come in, you got to throw your off speed stuff. But like, come in and throw your fastball, please. Like you don't, it's fine. Like throw like put your players in position first, put that on film, and then use that counter punch, use that curveball every once in a while to catch them off guard, because now you've put on film, like, hey, this is what we do in this situation. But like to come out and throw the curveball right away, like, no, like, please do not do that. Like you haven't shown a tendency that you're playing against here. There's a little bit too much of that. It just doesn't seem like smart play calling, which is an issue. So, all right, hey, let's hit the break. But before we do that, let's hear our friends from Underdog.
What is Underdog Fantasy? Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in all your favorite athlete performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. You think Caleb Williams will get higher than 2 passing touchdowns this week against the Patriots? That DeAndre Swift will get higher than 65 rushing yards? You can cook up some entries for a shot to win real cash prizes all football season long. And of course, you can play Red Zone Rush, which is a game where you won't find anywhere else. Just pick whether or not a player will score a touchdown by swiping left or right. Yes for yes, or left for no. Simple as that. Plus, your entry will automatically be boosted, and you get a 51% profit boost when you play. Underdog is the best place to play champion. So sign up now and deposit using our promo code, which is CITY, CITY, and they'll give you $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Underdog is fun and simple. And this week I'm thinking Cole Kmet, right? Is he due? I mean, he's had 1 target in 2 weeks.
I was gonna say you could have gone lower the last couple of weeks and been on it, but now we got a correction here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the course correction. They're going to get Cole Kmet involved. They got to get him involved. So I'm thinking Cole Kmet this week is my guy. He's my pick. I'm going to go higher. I don't care what his stats are. I haven't looked yet. I'm going higher on Cole Kmet because you can win 1,000 times your money by choosing higher or lower on player stats like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, receptions, so much more. So download the app today. And again, our promo code is CITY, and it's up to $1,000 bonus cash instantly. Download the app today. Our promo code CITY, $1,000 bonus cash right now. Every player, every touchdown, just like higher or lower on Underdog. And now the fun part, the disclaimer: must be 18 plus, 19 plus, Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus, Colorado for some games, 21 plus, Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text next step to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY at 467369.
You did it.
I did it again.
Quick break. Other side. We'll get to everybody's favorite segment, Three Bears. Stick with us. All right, Lester, Three Bears. Hot bowl of porridge, cold bowl of porridge, and just right. Hot bowl of porridge, who you got?
I wasn't expecting him to play, obviously. Reddy Stewart, undrafted free agent, right? Where did this guy come from? He had a nice preseason. He's been on the practice squad all season long. Of course, the injury to Kyler Gordon. They could not activate Tavarius Moore because he's already had his 3 elevations, so they had to find another defensive back. Reddy Stewart's the guy. I didn't think he'd play, right? I figured it'd be Josh Blackwell and nickel, and Blackwell played some nickel, but Reddy Stewart had more snaps. Tackle, forced fumble, nice peanut punch there on the game. So Reddy Stewart, where did he come from? We talked about last week how this secondary is well-coached unit, right? We gave Flu some of the credit, but John Hoke, he's the cornerback coach, the defensive pass game coordinator. David Overstreet II, he is their nickels back coach. And let's shout out Andre Curtis, who is their secondary/safeties coach. This is a good defensive secondary coaching staff because all these guys have played pretty good.
Ton of talent. And I think you and I were both pretty worried about Reddy Stewart maybe getting scooped up. Now, everybody's worried that their guys are going to get claimed on waivers and that you're not going to be able to hide them on the practice squad. And then every year it's like 9 guys across the league get get signed. I mean, it's a very low number, right? It's super low. But the Bears had an abundance of talent in the secondary. They really did. They had a lot of guys that I think could start or play significant snaps for a lot of teams in the league. And you have a young player in Reddy Stewart, and I liked him a lot. And so for me, that was the one guy I was worried about. And I was worried when you start getting injuries across the league that people go back and be like, hey, this guy had a great preseason. Let's try to elevate him. And if the Bears don't have any room, they got to let him go, right? Like, I mean, we've seen players be signed off the Bears practice squad in the past, and so I'm I like this guy. Like, I don't. I'm really curious what happens now that if he continues to have an opportunity to make some, get some reps and make some plays, he might be too good to try to go back and try to hide on the practice squad again, right? And so he was my hot bull as well. Like this is my guy. This is the guy that I like kind of latched onto in the preseason. I really like. Um, I want him on the team, man. I want us to keep seeing him make plays. He punched out the ball from the number 4 overall pick. That was Marvin Harrison Jr. So it was a great play. The Bears actually won the turnover battle in this game. like they they did what they normally do on defense. They got, I mean, that was the one big turnover. They got another one that was on 4th down, so like you could call that one way or the other, but it was technically a turnover. But yeah, that he played and he holds up, and I want to see more from him.
He had a nice preseason, like you said. He had a couple picks in the season finale, preseason finale. One he took back for a touchdown. I think he had like 10, 11 tackles, maybe a little more. But in training camp, while Kyler Gordon was injured, he was getting run with the ones. So the coaching staff obviously thought enough of him back then to kind of get him an extended look. And look, I also like Josh Blackwell. I think he's a good
player.
football player. Jalen Jones is another reserve, good football player. He got hurt a little bit. I think it was a shoulder injury. So maybe if there's an injury there, who knows what happened? Maybe they have to elevate Stewart for a little while longer here. Terrell Smith, he started, he left with an injury. He looked good when he was in there. A couple pass defense, I believe it was. So again, the entire secondary for the Bears is pretty damn good.
Yeah, there's not a lot of weak play. You just don't see a ton of drop off. The top line talent is really good, but the depth is also really good, which is a really cool thing. So, yeah, absolutely. What about Cold Bowl? Couple ways to go here.
I'm going to go. It's like a broken record. Last week it was Cole Kmet, the tight end usage. He only had 1 target last week. So what the hell? He had none this week. How can a guy who 2 weeks ago he was like top 5 for tight end receptions, tight end yards, and now he's just not used? Like why? We thought he had turned a corner after that first week, right? He had like only 1 catch that first week, and like they realized, hey, let's get Cole Kmet involved. And it seemed like he's a guy that Caleb looked for, right? When Caleb's in a little trouble, there's that big 6'6" guy kind of settling into the zone, running down the seam. We saw him hit him on a couple scramble drills, which does this team know how to do a good scramble drill?
No,
I'm curious if it's possible. I'm not sure why they would not be better at this, which is kind of a strange thing. But anyway, back to Cole Kmet and the tight end usage. Why? Where is it? I don't understand how they could just stop getting involved. Now, look, it's not all Shane Waldron because Caleb's the guy ultimately going through his reads. He decides where to go with the ball. But, I'm not asking you to scheme things up for him. But
no,
there's times where you see him out there, you're like, yeah, you probably could have hit Cole right there.
Yeah, and if he's late in the progression or we don't know exactly what's happening, but absolutely. Now it's a good one. I think you could call out rush defense because they got gashed. I think you could call out offensive line. There's a lot of moving pieces there. We've already kind of talked about that at length. For me, and I hate this because this is a guy that I've liked for a really long time. It's Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
10 targets. He turned 10 targets into 4 catches for 36 yards. I would say that 2 of those were drops. Well, one of them was just an egregious drop, and another one I would call a drop. And then I think he mistimed the jump in the end zone. I think that ball was fine. Now, maybe that's not a route that he can run anymore, but I think that looked worse than it needed to be because I think Keenan Allen just didn't play the ball well. And I mean, that's a touchdown. That's a touchdown. And I just he's here to be the chain mover. And I understand a couple of these routes are maybe a little bit more aggressive routes that we should have Rome running. And we've talked about that. But when you drop just a terrible drop for a first down, that's what you were here for. Like, if nothing else, you're the sure-handed veteran that is the safety blanket that's going to move chains. And when you're not doing that, like, you got to get called out.
Keenan Allen, I was so like talk about a top. I was so excited for that trade. I'm like, man, this guy has been a fun player to watch over the years. Yeah, he's got a couple injuries here and there, but he plays most of the games this season. He spaced out a couple. I thought it was going to be a great pickup, and I'm not sure how they're using him. There was a tweet earlier. I don't know if you saw it, and I forget who it was who sent it out, but I retweeted it, so it's on my timeline if you want to go check it out. And they kind of showed him running a route where it's a curl and go. I'm not sure what they call it in the NFL. It's you kind of come up, you curl like you're showing that, and then you take off down the seam. They showed him run that next to Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions, and the difference in speed, which you would expect to be, but the difference in speed was ridiculous. Keenan Allen, he just doesn't have that gear anymore, and it's sad. I mean, he's 31 now, I believe it is. So maybe he at that point, or maybe the foot's still bothering him. Regardless, as an offense, you got to correct that. You got to, well, look, let's use him in a different way. Use him like your U tight end. Use him on those routes. I'd rather see him on those routes than Gerald Everett.
100%.
Yeah. So I
100%. Understand what your personnel can do. Keenan Allen may have never been able to run that route. I don't know if it's a 31-year-old thing. I think it's a Keenan Allen thing.
Yeah.
He's not a sudden athlete. Like, he's good in terms of like he's good at his craft, right? He's a good route runner. But you can see he's already like setting up moves when he's coming off the line. Like, he's a different type of route runner than, a younger guy like Rome who could, work on that craft and learn things. But Rome he's going to threaten you with speed like that. That's what when he's coming off the line, that's what he's trying to do. Keenan Allen's trying to win with he's juking like at the line to try to figure out like, can I win some space instantly? It's a very different thing. So you can't expect the same routes to be run by these guys, right? And I would say that he is not well suited to run a curl and go, because no one's worried about him catching a curl and then turning it upfield for and breaking an explosive play. So they're not going to bite that hard. Whereas Amon-Ra St. Brown, they're like, I don't want this guy to get ball in space and turn around. So they're going to bite on it. And then when they bite, that's what that opens up that double move. So I don't know, man. I like Keenan Allen a lot, but you got to know how to use the guy. And when he has had those opportunities, there's been way too many mistakes from him for what he is. It's been a little disappointing for me, for someone who's really into him as a player.
Yeah, I saw a stat earlier today. Again, I'm not sure who it was on Twitter, but I'm on Twitter throughout the day, and I see these things come by, and there was something that there's been some inaccurate balls thrown his way, which I'm sure has something to do with it. But like you said, there were at least a couple drops. There's been a few other. You don't expect out of Keenan Allen if it's in his vicinity. He's a guy that normally would snatch up there and grab it, and we're not seeing that in his game this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a couple nice games, but just certainly not this one. But all right, finish it out just right. Who'd you have?
I'm staying with receiver. I'm going the rookie Rome Odunze. 104 yards, 4 catches, I believe. He had the one on the sideline where he kind of would have been a tough catch, but you think he should come down with that. But hopefully as his career progresses, he'll make more of those than less of those. But overall, it was a good game. And on the season, he is now up to 25 catches, 391 yards, and it actually leads the Bears in receiving yards. At 391, that's the tops on the Bears right now. So Rome Odunze is starting to come into his own now. This is now a second 100-yard game, and I think hopefully they'll start using him a little better, and we'll see more of this moving forward.
Yeah, he took the lead in the race to 1,000 yards, which may result in no one getting to 1,000 yards, which might be the saddest thing that results from this. Great wide receivers that are going to change him. Oh, guys, so sad. I had the same thing. I had Rome. He had 5 catches for 104 yards. Had a 44-yarder. That was a nice big play. Probably should have pulled in that other target, but again, what you expect from a rookie is not perfect. And he had a good game, but not perfect. And again, his second 100-yard performance. Hopefully, he has 3 or 4 more of those in the bag down the road here, and we see him really take over as that alpha number one. And you got DJ Moore being a supercharged number two that runs a different routes and different concepts. And then Keenan Allen can settle into that security blanket role. I mean, I really do think that this can work. I just don't understand how they're using these guys.
Yeah.
So, I had the same thing. I had Rome, and I'm still excited about Rome Odunze. I think he's going to be a really good player, and I think that Caleb and Rome is going to be the connection. It's taking some time to spin up.
Plus, it'll take a little while to see who the new play caller is going to be next year. Ben Johnson, right? That's
I mean, from your lips to
right.
to Hallis's ears, right? All right. I spent a lot of time diverting us throughout this episode, but do you have anything final before we get out of here?
Nah, just this is a man. It's the worst. Our worst fears are happening right now. This is exactly what we were all concerned about. Was this franchise doing this again? And that's where it's heading, right? It's heading to the same thing, unless there's a turnaround. And what have we seen to make we think that Flus can turn things around? We have not seen it happen. So here we are again. Rookie quarterback drafted. Coach is in. Coach is out. It happens too much. It's just it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah, the schedule really set up last year for him to kind of be able to correct the defense and do some of the good things that he did, because they had maybe some easier games down the stretch. Those are done after this Sunday.
Yeah.
The hard stretch is coming. The division is really good. You have all 6 division games at the end. You have the Niners, who are getting things figured out. They're a really good football team. I still think they're the team that can beat Detroit. Those to me are still the 2 toughest teams in the conference. And Seattle's not a pushover. So I mean, you just don't have an easy game left after this Sunday. And I don't even know who knows what this team looks like this Sunday against the Patriots, but this might not be an easy game either. But we'll see. We'll be here to cover it with you. So come back and join us. But yeah, I wore black for a reason today. I've stole this idea from Steve McMichael. I saw Steve McMichael do this once. He went on a radio show and said, "I'm wearing black because Jay Cutler just killed another Chicago Bears coaching career," and I thought it was really funny. So I thought I would join.
Shout out to Mongo. Yeah, nice.
Mongo, great personality. So, all right, we'll stick around for just a couple minutes with the YouTube crowd. But for those of you listening to the podcast, thanks for listening, and bear down. All right. Number one Bears fan says it's embarrassing.
Yes.
Is what it is. So pretty good.
That's the way they did it, man. It's like, really?
Maybe we should put embarrassing on a t-shirt.
Oh, that would sell.
Probably still $1 million. I was saying we got to bring back, I tried to bring back Cluster Flus yesterday on Twitter. We could bring back Flush the Flus, which was what we were running with for a while. And then Flus's excuses.
Oh, I forgot about that one. It's back. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
man. Terrible.
We had all these things locked and loaded last year. These things already happened, right? Our buddy Kev was talking about, like, he has set up, I don't know what show it's from, but like digging a hole in the desert or something. It was like, me and my buddies getting ready to bury Eberflus's head coaching career. And I was like, well, yeah, we did that. We dug the hole last year. It should be pretty easy.
The hole's out there somewhere.
Just have to like pull off the cover. Yeah. It's already ready to go. We had this thing figured out last year, man. Yeah, there you go. Professor Pancake
had one.
Let's see. Thoughts on polls starting to catch heat for bringing back Eberflus and leading the OC search landing on Waldron. So I still just don't believe it. I don't believe that it wasn't George McCaskey that was leading the charge to say, like, I would really prefer it. Like, can you make this work? Maybe he didn't say like you can't do it, but I think there was a very strong preference to not pay out the final 2 years of Eberflus's contract. And I think that the winning streak at the end of the year gave him enough cover to be able to keep him. And so the idea that, oh, it was Poles' decisions 100%. I don't know where that comes from, and I don't believe it. Like, it doesn't make sense. Maybe he Poles got behind his guy. This is my guy, and I'm all behind him and all that. Like, great. Like, that is what he said, and that's public. Like, he didn't leave any doubt. Like, that's what you're supposed to do in that situation, right? Like, he came out and he was strong in the defense of his guy, but you don't know what was said behind closed doors. And given how we know the McCaskies operate and the cash flow and all that kind of stuff, I'm not, unless I see reporting, unless Courtney Cronin comes out
Yeah.
and says, like, no, Poles could have done either. He had full blessing and he chose this. I'm just going to believe that Poles was being the dutiful GM and he's going to get another chance to bring in another coach.
I am curious when the Heat will get on polls, though. Like if Flus loses again next week and they stick with him again, and at some point he'll give the vote of confidence. That's what GMs do, right? At what point will the narrative switch to, okay, Ryan Poles, this is your guy. You've had a chance last year to reset the franchise. You didn't take it. Here you are now. It's not working, and you're still sticking with him. At what point will the narrative switch to now people are turning on polls? I actually have a poll coming out. The reacts last week I did a Flus one. Where are you at on Flus? This week it's where are you at on polls. I'm just curious to see how the Bears fans are now starting to look, because I mean, this is Poles' guy. I mean, he's in charge. I mean, I hear some people say, well, he can't make the call, which maybe he can't, but if he wants him out, and if you go to your team pres or you go to your ownership and say, hey, we got to make a move, and then they cut your feet out, that's not a good place to be as a GM either. So it's curious.
And the other half of that with Waldron, in
I
my
love
opinion,
I'm so
in my
pissed.
opinion with Waldron, like, I think there were better offensive options for this team, but they were for head coaching candidates. And then you went to, okay, well, you kept the head coach, so now you need an offensive coordinator. And, like, yeah, he seemed like, hey, this is a guy with experience. He's a professional. A lot of these other guys are going to be gambles because they've never called plays, and, like, so you can't really do that. So you needed to have somebody that had some experience. This was a guy that had, like, what seemed like a good floor and a low ceiling, but like, that's what you're going to get with a guy that's going to be an offensive coordinator with experience. Like, again, you could have taken a chance, but you went for the guy that with some experience. And I think there was just, like, the Cliff Kingsbury situation, like, just felt a little too, like, was he really that close with Caleb and at USC? Was that, is that the way you want to go? Would that undermine? There's the other thing, right? You have a weak head coach. Do you bring in somebody that undermines the head coach, right? Like, there's something that happens there too, right? So I don't know. I thought Waldron would be fine, but I thought it would be a decent floor, low ceiling situation.
He was a safe hire. I
Yeah.
think after Getsy came in with no experience as a play caller, you wanted a guy that has done the job. And look, he wasn't one of the best guys, but he was getting some head coaching interviews based on what he did in Seattle. The Geno Smith resurrection, did some nice stuff there. So, like I said, I thought it was a good hire, the best hire they can make. It just didn't work out. You want to finish off with one more here with Berlissimo? Because I want to talk about the Cardinals coach a bit. He said, I'll give the Cardinals, they coach their defense very well to create pressure by using a mixture of overloads of delayed blitzers and a huge amount of match and zones, which were very heavily disguised. So the Cardinals coach, Jonathan Gannon, he was a Flus guy. He was under Flus in Indy.
Yeah.
So here's Flus getting pantsed by his guy,
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what? Like, that's another one of those little things that just pisses me off, that, the pupil has surpassed the teacher here.
Yeah, and like he's right. There was a lot of interesting stuff that was happening that they were throwing at Caleb. What have we seen Flus do much of that? Right? Like he seems pretty reluctant to do that. So yeah, I know. I got a little salty at the end of that. I saw them hug on the at the end of the game film that I was watching. And I took a picture and it was like, hey, you got any room for on your staff for me next year? Because uh, I'm sure Flus will be a fine defensive coordinator in the future. You know, he's made his bank. You know, he's set up for life. Not going to feel bad about Matt Eberflus not getting to continue being the head coach of the Chicago Bears or anything like that. But um, he's not a head coach.
No.
That's all I
Clear
got.
as day. Yeah, that's it.
I feel like I made that case over a year ago.
Yeah.
And here we are. We still got to talk about this. So
The glow up wasn't enough.
No. All right. Well, we'll get out of here. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Maybe next week we'll have, a consolation win to talk about.
Hopefully.
Get pumped.
Time.
And then it'll be Packer week.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
There it is.
All right, guys. We'll see you soon.